Hello, Lloyd, aka MegaBlitzz. In today's video, we're going to be looking at all the decks that made Day 2 at EUIC. And the reason I want to be doing this is because I actually want to compare the decks that performed very well at EUIC to the tier list that I had made and kind of see how correct I was, or how wrong, or how off, or things like that. So, starting us off here, we got toward Reklev's winning list here. Just, you know, it's Charizard with Pidgeot, but a 1-1 line of a barrel as well, so kind of interesting. Also playing a Cleffa, which I think is kind of crazy, but it works as a really nice free pivot. And early game, it works for grasping draw, so you can able to draw up to 7 cards in your hand, especially if your opponent plays like Spiritomb and they shut off your Rotom V. Having that Cleffa makes a lot of sense. I was also kind of shocked to see Prime Catcher in here. I felt like a lot of Charizard lists were going to be playing Maximum Belt to kind of just be a little bit more aggressive early on to make that 180 get to 230 pretty quickly. However, I guess it makes sense because Charizard has a pretty good matchup into things like Future Hands and stuff. So not really any reason to play the Maximum Belt when you're already pretty favored into that matchup. So really crazy to see Pidgeot and Barrel in the same Charizard deck. It makes a lot of sense, and I see why Tord has done it, but crazy that he had won with this list. And then I want to check out our second place list here, being Lost Tina with Banette EX. Now I will say, I like this idea. I think this is a really cool concept. I like the Banette EX in there for the Everlasting Darkness item lock. Poltergeist can hit some really big damage, especially into like the stall matchups or things like that. And something else that I think is really cool is putting a Forest Seal Stone in here to be able to use that Star Alchemy if you're not going to be Star Requiem that game at all, which feels kind of nice. The one downside I don't like about this is you don't have any water energies for the Radiant Greninja, and we had seen in the finals in Game 2 where Isaiah had a position where he had 2 prize cards left. Had there been water energies in the deck, he would have been able to take it to a Game 3 because he could have Moonlight Shurikened 2 baby Pokemon or 2 low HP Pokemon to go to that Game 3. But the list doesn't play waters. It's kind of there for more of a consistency or a draw engine, and if anything else. But really cool to see Lost Tina still showing that it's got stuff. The Banette package I think is really cool. I think it's something that I definitely want to try out. But I genuinely might try to like fit at least 2 water energies in this deck somehow. I don't really know where I would be cutting things for it though. I think I might go to like 1 Shuppet and then maybe go down to something like 2 Switch and try to fit it in there. Maybe cut the Artisan or something. Or take, you know, away 1 Psychic Energy and try to swap it around for water or something. Just because I feel like being able to attack with Greninja is really strong in Lost Tina, especially in that scenario where it could have taken them to a Game 3. But still really cool. And then we got Pidgeot Control here. Just kind of going to look at these top lists, and then we'll kind of go through the rest here and kind of just breeze through all the other decks. So we got Pidgeot Control. There's not really any Snorlax in this deck, so you're trying to use Pidgeot to find the pieces that you need, trying to use the Noivern EX Covert Flight, Bouffalant Lost Headbutt, you know, the Luxray Fang Snipe, Mawile Tempting Trap, Mimikyu stuff, and then Radzard if you need it. And then, you know, Chi-Yu for the Jealousy Singe for that kind of mill stuff. You're also going to attack with Blustering Wind if you need to, because the deck does play double turbos in here. But I really like this deck. It definitely seems like a stall or control deck that I might actually play. I'm not really a huge fan of like the stall control. I think just playing a more controlled deck seems more fun. So definitely a list that I would try out, and I'm really glad to see things like Roseanne's Backup getting played in decks. Eerie makes sense. Hero's Cape absolutely makes sense in here. I could also see this being like a Prime Catcher, but Hero's Cape makes a lot of sense because you can turn this into like a 230 HP Bouffalant. You can turn this into like a 360 HP Noivern EX. So it makes a lot of sense putting the Hero's Cape in the deck. Tackle Machine De-Evolution makes a lot of sense. A little bit tough with that Mist Energy kind of running around. However, it does help into things like Gardevoir and stuff because they don't play Mist Energy. So really cool there. We got Charizard Pidgeot. Very basically just the standard Charizard Pidgeot without anything crazy. Cleffa is probably the craziest thing in here. Maybe TM Devo. The Maximum Belt that guy I was talking about is in there though. And then we got some Future Hand stuff. Now, I will say, I had ranked Charizard Pidgeot to be really good. Sure, I had ranked Pidgeot Stall Control to be really good. And I had ranked Future Hands in tier 1.5. And I'm still pretty confident in that. I think Future Hands is a decent deck. I just don't think it has a lot of... It bricks really hard, and you have a really tough time trying to come back out of a really bad hand or a low hand. The best draw engine you have is EUIC for restarting for 3, which feels kind of bad. This kind of feels like the new Miraidon, where it's like, all right, get set up. If I can get everything going, we're off to the races. All is good. So playing one EUIC in there makes sense for that restart and the free pivot as well. If you don't have like a future booster energy capsule on any of these, we have seen this deck perform pretty well. I mean, we had 2 alone in top 8 and many more in day 2 altogether. So makes a lot of sense. The heavy count of electric energies you have to do, because you need to be able, you need to be able to hit 2 electric energies off of your generators almost every time if you can. So really cool here. Prime Catcher makes sense in this deck for sure. Reboot Pod is kind of like a second default if you don't have anything else, because you can just put some energies on things. I feel like Reboot Pod makes more sense in Future Box as opposed to Future Hands. Prime Catcher seems a lot better in Future Hands. So really cool. Definitely not super shocked to see it do well. I was shocked to see 2 of them, however, make it into top 8, and their lists are very, very similar. Nothing too crazy. I mean, Crisis Punch was a little bit different in here. I thought that was kind of spicy. And this is another deck that I had actually ranked entirely low, which was Moon Dune. I ranked this in tier 2.5, and boy was I ever wrong. This deck is actually pretty good. It actually had went 4-0 at my locals just last night. So the deck definitely has some legs to run with, and it is pretty consistent a lot of the times, being able to hit the big KOs with Frenzy Gouging or a Calamity Storm with that Roaring Moon EX, but then having that single prize attacker in the back that scales the longer the game goes on feels really good. Having a draw engine that gets shuffled back into your deck so you're clearing up bench space and stuff feels really good. You don't really have to worry about decking yourself a lot. I don't want to say not have to worry, but it's a little bit harder for you to deck yourself in this because of the Dunsparce and that runaway draw. I think this is definitely a great draw engine for sure. Prime Catcher makes sense in here for sure. I think this deck is kind of the perfect 60 already. I mean, I guess maybe you could go to like 2 Super Rod and cut like an Artisan or something. Or like you can't really cut a penny because you want to be able to pick up your Roaring Moon EX if you have to. But I could see maybe some of these like trainers getting kind of swapped around or something. So we'll have to see there. But I was definitely wrong on that one. We got Snorlax Pidgeot. I had ranked that, like I said, up here in tier 1, which makes sense. Gardevoir, however, I ranked in tier 2. And I feel like it could go up in tier 1.5 now because I think it proved that it still has stuff, especially now with you having the Klefki Mischievous Slux. You can kind of control the board state a little bit with that Mimikyu. You have the Flutter Mane, which is actually not only a good just kind of disruption Pokemon with that Midnight Fluttering ability. However, Hex Hurl is a great attack. 90 damage, being able to put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's bench Pokemon is also really strong. Playing the Drifloon, it feels like you're just kind of late game or you're big hitter per se. Still got that Scream Tail in there, of course, as well. And then Gardevoir EX actually now becomes more of a relevant attacker in this deck. We had seen, I believe his name is Fabian, I think. Yeah. And he had put himself in a position where he was using Miracle Force a couple times when we had seen it on stream. And it's definitely something that you have to do. Hero's Cape 100% makes sense in this deck for the Drifloon or for the Scream Tail or something. Makes sense for sure. Technical Machine Evolution, you're kind of more of like a turbo Gardevoir now. You're trying to evolve really quickly. You're trying to jam energies and get damage counters on that Drifloon, that Scream Tail really fast, really quickly. And if you can't, you start attacking with that Flutter Mane. You start attacking with, you know, the Gardevoir EX really, really fast. So definitely makes sense. I would say I'm pretty right. Tier 1.5, maybe up in here somewhere you could move it. But I still feel like I'm pretty confident where I had put that. We got another Future Hands here. We got Ancient Box, which is a little bit different than Moon Dune, where this plays like the Koraidon, the Flutter Manes, and the, you know, the Baby Roaring Moon and stuff. And you're kind of just trying to jam a bunch of ancient stuff, Professor Lay's Vitality, Explorer's Guidance, other Pokemon, Earthen Vessels, the capsules, the drum. You're trying to get them in the discard as fast as you can and really make it so your opponent has to take 6 KOs or 4 or 5, depending if they're playing like Greninja or Sableye or something, to put them in a position where the game goes longer and your Roaring Moon and stuff kind of scales later on. One of the other cool things about this deck is it plays, this Koraidon here has Shred, which does really nicely into your stall matchup, which feels pretty good. So definitely a really cool deck. I had ranked this, I believe we got it here at tier 2. I feel like you can move this also to tier 1.5. I feel like I'm pretty confident that it could be a real deck. I just think that maybe the Roaring Moon to Dunsparce deck might be a little bit more consistent, or maybe the kind of go-to for the Ancient Box style here. And we got Lost Zone Box coming in at like 12th place here. Kind of standard what we've been seeing online tournaments for the most part with the Roaring Moon, the Raikou, the Iron Hands bundle for the Hyper Blower. But you can also use the attack on Iron Bundle, which is pretty decent. If any Pokemon is an evolution Pokemon, it can attack during opponent's next turn. So it does pretty well into things like Zard for that attack. You got the Hoopa in here for its first attack mostly. This attack does 50 damage for each energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon, so really nicely into things like Lugia or Lost Box decks where they're trying to Mirage Gate and put a bunch of energies onto things, or even Future Hands where they're trying to Generator and put a bunch of energies onto both Iron Hands, are trying to get them both set up really quickly. So not surprised to see this deck up here. I had put this, I believe, in tier 1.5. I feel like it's still pretty true at tier 1.5. I definitely think that this deck has a lot of potential. We got Azul playing Lostina, which is kind of crazy. This Lostina deck is kind of the standard one per se, with, you know, the Iron Leaves, the Cramorant, Spiritomb, Manaphy, you know, your Prime Catchers, your Temple of Sinnohs, and you're just playing like Lostina, trying to, you know, Moonlight Shuriken if you can, trying to early cram, Lost Impact, Requiem, Iron Leaves is in there for the Charizard matchup, stuff like that. Now, one thing I will say is it's kind of funny that Azul played Lostina, because Azul had always talked about how Lostina is mid and bad and etc, etc. So just kind of ironic, I would say. So that kind of standard Lostina list, and a lot of the other team members had played that list as well. You know, Caleb Grandner, Grant Manley, that whole team had played that same list. Now, we got an Arceus Armarouge. Now, I will say I was super wrong. I put this down here in tier 2.5, and this deck showed that it's got some stuff. Being able to fire off, move a bunch of fire energies around, get the Armarouge EX, got Radiant Heatran, Delphox, Gouging Fire. This deck has potential, and I definitely cannot wait to try it out. I have played it a couple times. It just, the times I did play it, it didn't feel as good. Now, this list is very different than the list I was playing. I didn't have Gouging Fire in there. I didn't have Delphox, and I wasn't playing, and I was playing Radiant Heatran on my list. But I was playing a 2-2 line of Bidoof and Babarrel for a more consistent draw, and I was also trying to fit a Squelvet in there as well. So definitely want to try this list out and see if it's a little bit better. But really cool to see this deck perform really well. I think having a different fire type deck in the format is definitely going to be good. So really cool to see Arceus Armarouge. We got Piper Lapine playing a very similar-ish Gardevoir deck that we had seen in 9th place, but this one's playing the Buddy Catch Gallade, which is really neat. And then coming down here, we got our first Chen Pao back Excalibur. Now, I had put in Chen Pao up in tier 1, and I still feel like that's pretty true. The thing with Chen Pao is you might not always win with Chen Pao. However, you can get the day 2 pretty confidently playing Chen Pao. The deck is really good. It's positioned really well in the format, and I still feel like that's really true. Now, I will say, the times I have been playing, I kind of wish this Kyogre was like anything else sometimes. It definitely feels like the first card to cut out of the deck, just as there's so many times where you can't really get to Dynamic Wave, or if you can, they have something like Manaphy or whatever, and you can't like hit something on the bench. It feels kind of bad. But definitely feels good. Just the standard Chen Pao deck that we have been seeing online with the 3 Bidoof, 2 Babarrel line, the 2 Chen Pao, the 1 Iron Hands, the Kyogre, the 1 Lightning, Prime Catchers. Something I will say though is the amount of times that I have been playing this, I have actually went from 2 Cypher Maniacs code breaking to 2 Iono. I feel like just having that more disruption felt better. So you could put this down in like the top of tier 1.5, but I still feel like it's pretty okay in tier 1. So pretty confident my decision in that. Got our first Lugia deck. Now, unfortunately, Lugia didn't perform as great as I was hoping it would. However, it still didn't do bad. The nice thing about Lugia is it's one of those decks where if you can just get set up, get 2 chops in the discard pile, get to your Cinccino's, you're doing pretty well. You're able to start special roll for like 280 or 330 depending on the matchups and stuff. So that's really cool. I will say I never would have thought about Luxray making a huge comeback in this like format per se, but I mean it makes sense if you get behind. It's kind of a nice comeback mechanic, especially if you end up bricking a little bit and your opponent takes like 1 prize card or something, or even 2 prize cards. You're able to bench that Luxray reversal energy onto it and having just a nice single prize attacker that's hitting for 180, which feels really good. KOs like Luminions, and it does really good in the mirror match. It does really good being like KO Mew EX. So definitely makes sense. Master Ball is the ace spec of choice. I feel like a lot of people picked, which makes sense. I have seen a couple people playing Maximum Belt in Lugia. Not too sure how I feel about all that, but that's neither here nor there. I have been playing with less Professor's Researches and more Great Balls, just because there's a couple times when I was playing Lugia, I would have like 3 or 4 energies in my hand, and I'm like, all right, I wish this Professor's Research was anything else, because the deck played 4, so it felt really bad having to like constantly discard energies. So Lugia is still kind of trying to figure out that nice 60. I feel like we got like the core 52 or 55 or somewhere in there down, but those last like 5 or 6 or 4 cards we're still kind of trying to figure out. So I feel like tier 1.5 is still okay for Lugia. A lot of people did well with it, and a lot of people got to day 2 with it. I don't think it's at the top of tier 2.5. I think it would be kind of somewhere in here, like maybe in the middle. But still really nice to see Lugia perform well. A deck that I actually put in rogue/bad was a Spratha EX. Now, I have actually put this deck into TCG Live, and I have been playing with it, and it's been tons of fun. I've really been enjoying my time playing this deck. I have seen a couple people from Girl Power TCG on Twitter playing this deck, and they have won cups and stuff with it. I don't know if it's the same exact 60 as this, but a Spratha EX nonetheless. So really cool to see this deck perform well. I'm excited to see if it will continue to do well, or if it's something we have to really worry about, or if this was kind of just like a one-off breakout moment because they hit a lot of Zards or something. So we'll have to see. But really cool. Definitely was wrong. Rogue/bad feels not where this deck should be. I feel like maybe like tier 2.5 or tier 2 should be where that is. Now we got an Arceus deck here. Now this one is a little bit different. This one's kind of like a control type style of an Arceus deck. Kind of like the Regigigas V-Star one that we have seen. This one's playing like Eerie and stuff. You're playing like Luxray V for that Fang Snipe. You're playing Slacking and trying to have the Spirit Tome out as well at the same time, so you can heavy impact for 260. But then of course you also have things like Hero's Cape in here just to make it really bulky to get to 330, which feels really good. So you have just this really big, hard-hitting 330 Pokemon that just can go, which feels really nice. Fluttermane feels like a really cool Pokemon to add in this deck. It kind of reminds me of the Arceus Klefki deck that we had seen for a hot bit that was kind of going around. But definitely like this deck. Got the grabbers in here, so like a control Arceus type style. I didn't really have this in the tier list. No one thought it would be a thing, so it's kind of just like a rogue off meta. But if I would put it somewhere, I'd kind of put it in like tier 2.5, maybe tier 2. I think it has legs, and I think it can go somewhere. I just don't know if it's consistent enough to be getting you into day 2s. So we got another Pidgeot control here, very similar to what we had seen in third place. This is playing Cloth EX with a counter-attacking Pinsir. If this Pokemon is in the action spot and is damaged by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, you discard an energy from that attacking Pokemon. It does really good into things like Lugia, because you put them in a position where Lugia has to hit it for 220 with the full Tempest Dive. You don't really want to put a DTE, because then you're at 200 and you're short. Your Cinccino's weak to it. So that feels kind of bad. I've seen some lists playing one copy of Fighting Energy in the list to be able to attack with Cloth if need be. Once again, Pidgeot control is kind of like, I put it up here in tier 1, but this version is very similar. So I would say like tier 1 or tier 1.5 for this version specifically. So really cool to see that there. I got some bunch of Chien-Paos, bunch of Zards, more Lost Tina. We got another Ancient Box down here. We got some Future Hands. We got just like plain classic Snorlax stall. I'd put that in tier 1.5. I think this is still kind of true. I think you could put it in tier 1.5 and leave it there, or have it maybe in tier 2, and I think it would also be fine. Just a very similar one we've been seeing with the Hero's Cape and stuff, and the Pidgeot V, the Chi-Yus, who are trying to stall your opponent out of the game, lock them out, make it so they can't retreat or can't do anything, and then put up that Chi-Yu and just start milling away. Feels really good. I like the 2 fire energy as well in this, because it gives you a position where you can actually attack with Flame Surge if need be. Choose a 3-year bench Pokemon for each of those Pokemon, search your deck for fire energy, attach it, but you don't really worry about that. You just start hitting for 100 and start taking KOs if you need to, which feels kind of cool. And being able to also just like attach one to the Pidgeot V, put the Forest Seal Stone on it as well, and then use that Vanishing Wings. So if you're kind of playing in like a mirror or something, it makes it harder for them to mill you, because you'll be able to constantly have a recycling thing. I feel like feels pretty good. Keep going down here. Got some more Lost Box. Got our Arctinas. I think that's actually our first Arctina, I think. Yeah, first Arctina. I had put an Arctina in tier 1.5. I feel like this is definitely tier 2. I think Arc Armarouge is probably the better Arceus variant at the moment. But very standard Arctina. You're playing the 2-2 line on Giratina V and V-Star. You're trying to Trinity Nova, put the energies onto it, Impact for 280, or Impact for 330 to get rid of Charizards and stuff. I feel like Arctina was kind of just a comfort pick for a lot of people. We've already seen the archetype. It wasn't going to be any different than in what it was a year ago, except maybe a couple cards like Iron Leaves and the Maximum Belt and stuff. But other than that, the deck's kind of been tried and true. I definitely think this deck probably would go down here in like tier 2. I don't think it's tier 1.5. It just felt like kind of the comfort go-to pick for Arceus variants here. We got Future Box, which I had put in Future Box down here in tier 2.5. I think you could put it in tier 2 and be fine. This is kind of the version of playing like Iron Boulder. You got 1 Iron Hands, you got the Iron Leaves, you got the Iron Treads, and you're kind of like the Reggie's type deck where you're playing a lot of one-ofs. You're trying to really just maximize you're trying to just have an answer for every matchup per se. I don't think this deck is bad by any means. It's just a lot going on, and Future Hands just has a easier time into a lot of the decks in the format than I feel like Future Box does overall. We got Goldango here, our first Goldango deck. I put in Goldango in tier 2.5. I feel like that's still kind of true. You can probably leave it in tier 2.5, maybe the bottom of tier 2 and still be okay. But pretty similar to what we've been seeing of old Goldango. The only thing that's different is you're playing like Morty's Conviction, Silene, Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking, which makes sense, kind of like same reason Chen Pao plays this, so you can hopefully, coin bonus your way into it, or Greninja your way into it or something. My buddy Blake had played this at Locals last night, went 3-1 with it and did pretty well. So Goldango is definitely still a real deck. I just don't know if it's quite a great deck. I think it's still good, but I think you could put this in like tier 2 and have it make sense for sure. Coming down here, we got Banette Gardevoir. Now, I put Banette, like, Control down here in Rogue/Bad. I think Banette Control should be down here, but Banette Gardevoir is a little bit different. You're trying to also attack with Gardevoir EX and Screamtail, so you're teching 4 other things. You're kind of like Control-type aggro deck. I feel like you can put this up here in, like, tier 2, tier 2.5, and still have it make sense and still be relevant. So very cool to see this come in here. Calamitous Wasteland and stuff makes sense. You're playing like this aggro variant if you need to, but you can also play a control type variant if you need to, which is pretty cool. Coming down here, we got another Chen Pao, some more Turbo Lost Box or Lost Toolbox type stuff. Got some more Ancient Box, a couple more Lugias. John Ang playing the same list as Isaiah Bradner, so they seem to do pretty well. I know Ruhl Reddy and all those guys were also playing it as well. A couple more stalls. We got Dialga V-Star. Now, I had put in Dialga in tier 2, and I think I actually kind of want to bump this down to tier 2.5. I don't think it's that good. I think it has potential. I just don't think we're there yet. I think we got to figure out the kind of perfect energy count. We got to figure out how to get into Matangs quicker. I think maybe playing like Titan Machine Evolution definitely makes sense, like they're playing here for sure. I had played against that Dialga last night at Locals, actually. And it seems to be one of those things where you kind of either have it or you don't. If you can just target down their Matangs and get rid of them, they don't really have anything to run with, which feels kind of bad. So, not super shocked to see one make it into day 2. I knew 1 or 2 of them, maybe even 3 were going to make it into day 2, which we did have, I think, 3 lists making it into day 2 here. But really cool. I think Zamazenta is kind of okay in this deck. I think you actually just cut this and go to like an extra energy or a better, like another trainer or something. Same with Metagross. I just feel like you cut this, Like, cut the Metagross, cut the Zamazenta, go for the full Dialga type thing, or maybe keep the Zamazenta, cut the Metagross. I feel like could be good as well. But yeah, having this in tier 2 feels kind of eh. Coming down here, we got Ursaluna Pidgeot, which was kind of neat. Got the Pete Hunt control type variant, able to put 2 cards in your discard pile into your hand, which was pretty cool. Got the Ursa Ring and stuff to try to evolve in it. Teddy Ursa into the Ursa Ring, into the Ursaluna. Got the 4 rare candies, so maybe you can cut down to like 1 Ursa Ring and kind of go that route. But you also got the Pidgeys into Pidgeot, so I guess 4 rare candy does make sense. So pretty cool rogue deck there coming in. Got another Arceus Armarouge, some more Arctinas and Lugias and type stuff. We got, let's see here, got another Dialga Metang, got another Arctina. We got just plain Roaring Moon here. Let's say this is like, it's Roaring Moon, but without the Dunsparce. I think you just play the Dunsparce in this Roaring Moon type style deck. If they just put the Dunsparce in here, I think the deck gets a lot better. But still pretty cool to see that get in there as well. Scrolling down through, we got Great Tusk Mill. Now, I had put in Great Tusk Mill at tier 2. This deck goes down straight in like Rogue/Bad or tier 2.5. This deck is mid at best. You really have to just hit a supporter or hit an ancient type. Yeah, you have to hit an ancient supporter like every turn for to make this deck feel relevant and to be able to actually be consistent enough to be able to mill your opponent. Honestly, I'd probably just play like Wugtrio Mill over the Great Tusk Mill on it, like sometimes, because at least Wugtrio Mill, you don't have to play a supporter to rely on. You just kind of rely on coin flips. It feels a little bad sometimes, but I'm just kidding. I'm memeing. So definitely put this in like tier 2.5 or bad. It's kind of okay. So wasn't shocked to see one of them make it in here. Tons more Chempao, more Arctina, Dialga there. Got some more Lugia. And Lugia didn't do awful. Like I said, it definitely performed well. There's tons of Lugia in day 2. Just didn't quite have that breakout moment. Got some more Banette Gardevoir. Tons and tons of future hands in day 2. Another Goldengo there. Got another Pidgeot Control. Arc Vulpix here. Now, I put this up in tier 1.5. This deck is like tier 2. They're playing like a Hisui and Gudra V and V-Star in the deck. They're playing the Noivern and Noivern. So it's kind of more of a control type variant, trying to have a big answer for a lot of things. That Covert Flight with that Noivern, the Vulpix for like Charizard and stuff with abilities. You got the Eerie in the deck. You got Gudra V-Star for, you know, the potential Moisture Star if you need to, or just a big bulky attacker. I will say, I think Hero's Cape makes a little bit more sense in this deck. It can make things a little bit more bulkier. So putting Hero's Cape on the Gudra feels really good. Prime Catcher is also still just a great card. So I would put this Arc Vulpix deck like in tier 2 or maybe tier 2.5. So did okay on that one. A couple Goldangos squeaking their way into day 2. Some more Charizards, some more Lugias. So definitely not too bad. I feel like I did pretty okay with my tier list here. So really cool to just see all these decks. And this is kind of the first variance and the first look at what the meta might look like come this rotation in this new format. So I'm really excited to start trying out some more of these decks, seeing if things are real. I've been just trying my hardest to just play all kinds of different stuff. I would have played Lugia had I gone to EUIC, and Lugia still seemed to perform really well. You got tons of them here in like top 64, tons in just in day 2. A lot of Charizard decks, a lot of Charizard Pidgeot. Was shocked to not see one like Bibzard. I mean, we saw Tords with like Bibzard and Pidgeot, kind of like a combo, but I was shocked to not see just like a pure Bibzard deck make it into day 2. I had put in that up here in tier 2 1.5, and I think it's just kind of down here in like tier 2.5. It's not great unless you're counting like Tords kind of deck. Kind of go over the rest of the decks here that we didn't get to mention. Miraidon tier 2.5. This goes in straight rogue/bad. It's not good. It didn't exist. I don't think anybody played it to my knowledge. Raging Bolt also like tier 2.5. I think I could leave it here. I think it has potential. You can play it with Lost Box variants. People are playing with Gardevoir. People are playing with Palkia. There's so many variants with Raging Bolt that I think it's okay to leave it there. Like a Gouging Fire EX that had won the Thailand, I believe, regional. Tier 2, no, it's like bad. It's like rogue/bad. It's not good. It didn't even exist here. Lost Sablezard, I think there was a couple in here. Yeah, you got Lost Box Charizard with Radiant Charizard. So definitely glad I could catch that. So we had a couple of them in here to my knowledge. You know, you got one there. So deck definitely existed. I think tier 2 is a good spot for it though. Maybe bottom of tier 1.5 or like top of tier 2 could be fun as well for this Lost Sablezard deck. For sure. So yeah, kind of just covered all the decks here. I think that a lot of these things could be good. One thing I wish that would have been really cool to see at EUIC was a little bit more of a variety in top 8. I think just like you had 2 Charizards, you had 2 future hands, but being able to see where the format and the meta looks like and what things we kind of need to figure out how to work around, I'm really excited for, especially someone who's been playing tons of Lugia. I'm really excited to try to figure out how to make the future hands matchup better. I mean, you can play Lost Vacuums and stuff to kind of get rid of the heavy batons, but I'm really excited to try to just figure out this meta and the format and try to wrap my head all around that. Alrighty guys, let's jump right in to that outro. Alright, that's gonna do it for today's video. Let me know down in the comments what deck you guys would have played had you gone to EUIC. What deck were you excited to see make day 2? What deck were you not so happy to see make day 2? Personally, I was really happy to see a lot of Lugia in day 2, a lot of Lost Box just in general, and I was not happy to see Future Hands do very well. It's definitely my least favorite deck in the current format. If you guys enjoy the content I've been making for here on the channel, don't forget to leave a like, smash that subscribe button. I really would appreciate it. And I'll see you all in the next one. Peace!